we basically looked for companies where we thought we could understand what the future would look like 5 or 10 or 15 years hence. And that didn't mean we had to do it to 4 decimal places or anything of the sort, but we had to have a feel for it. And we had to know our limitations. So we stayed away from a lot of things. And at that time, prices were different. So in terms of knowing we were getting enough for our money, it was a much easier decision than it is currently. But there weren't elaborate, there are no planning sessions or anything of the sort. We kept reading and we kept thinking and we kept looking at things that came along as Charlie described it in the movie, and comparing opportunity A with opportunity B. And in those days we were capital constrained, so we usually had to sell something if we were going to buy something else, and that always makes for that's an interesting challenge always when you're measuring something you hold against something that has come along and to see which is more attractive. And we probably leaned very much toward things where we felt we were certain to get a decent result than where we were hopeful of getting a brilliant result. That's went with our instincts and kept putting one foot in front of the other. Charlie, what would you say?
Well, that's exactly what we did, and it worked wonderfully well. And part of it is because we're such splendid people and worked so constructively, and part of it is we were a little lucky. We had some good fortune. Now, Warren says he was lucky to go to Geico, but not every 20-year-old was going down to Washington, D.C. and knocking on the doors of empty buildings to try and find something out that he was curious about. So we made some of our luck by being curious and seeking wisdom, and we certainly recommend that to anybody else. And there's nothing that produces wisdom more thoroughly than really getting your own nose whacked hard when you make a mistake. And we had a fair amount of that, didn't we?
We have plenty of them. If you'll read this book, you'll see about a few of them. We thought we knew about the department store business in Baltimore, and we thought we knew about the trading stamp business. And we've had a lot of experience with bad businesses, and that makes you appreciate a good one. And to some extent, it sharpens your ability to make distinctions between good and bad ones. So, and we've had a lot of fun along the way. That helps too. I mean, if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're likely to get a better result than if you go to work with your teeth clenched every morning.
I think we were helped because we came from families where there were some admirable people, and we tended to identify other admirable people better than we would have coming from a different background. So my deceased wife used to say, you can't accomplish much in one generation. We owe a considerable amount, both of us, to the families we were raised in. I think the family standards helped us to identify the good people more easily than we would have if we'd had a more disadvantaged background. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Have you still got your father's briefcase? Or?
I still got it, but I don't know where it is. I can't carry it anymore. It's worn out. It's got holes in it.
Yeah. I got my dad's desk from 75 years ago. This is pineapple juice, incidentally. People were questioning that. They say it's good for your throat if you're going to talk a long time.
Yes, well, of course, reputation you get over a long period of time. Very few people are like Charles Lindbergh, where you just suddenly have a great reputation. Most of us have to acquire one very slowly, and that was true in Berkshire's case. And in any individual, you just have to get the best reputation you can in the years you're allotted and the time available. And it may work out well, it may work out poorly, but it's a wise investment. I see all the time opportunities come to people where it's the credibility they've gotten in the past that causes them to have the new opportunity. So I think hardly anything is more important than behaving well as you go through life. And I think we actually try to behave better as we got more prosperous. And I think you'd be crazy if you didn't. So I certainly recommend that you follow those old-fashioned principles. And I don't think there's any way of guaranteeing a total powerhouse brand, nor can, if a result is a 1 in 50 million type result, you're probably not going to get it.
Johnny Agnelli of Fiat, back in, I think it was 1988, I was at dinner with him one time, and he said something to me that stuck with me. He said, when you get old, he says, you'll have the reputation you deserve. He said, he said, for a while you can fool people, but he says, when he was talking about himself at the time, but he said, when you get to be my age, he says, whatever reputation you have, it's probably the one you deserve. And I think the same is true of companies. And frankly, it has helped Berkshire a whole lot, that it has gotten a reputation to be a somewhat different sort of company. I mean, I don't think we set out to do that exactly, but it has worked out that way.
Okay, this is a question. Oops, that's not the question. Hold on. Here it is. This is a question from John Wells right here in Omaha, and he says, you've described inflation as a gigantic corporate tapeworm. Which of Berkshire's businesses are best suited to thrive during a period of high inflation, and why? Which will suffer the most, and why?
Yeah, well, the best businesses during inflation are usually the best. They're the businesses that you buy once, and then you don't have to keep making capital investments subsequently. So you do not face the problem of continuous reinvestment involving greater and greater dollars because of inflation. That's one reason real estate in general is good during inflation. If you built your own house 55 years ago like Charlie did, or bought one 55 years ago like I did, it's a one-time outlay. Whereas if you get an inflationary expansion in replacement capital without having to replace yourself. And if you got something that's useful to someone else, it tends to be priced in terms of replacement value over time. So you really get the inflationary kick. Now, if you're in a business such as the utility business or the railroad business, it just keeps eating up more and more money, and your depreciation charges are inadequate, and you're kidding yourself as to your real economic profits. So any business with heavy capital investment tends to be a poor business to be in inflation, and often it's a poor business to be in generally. And the business where you buy something once, a brand is a wonderful thing to own during inflation. See's Candy built their brand many years ago. Now we've had to nourish it as we've gone along, but the value of that brand increases during inflation, just as the value of really any strongly branded goods. Gillette bought the entire radio rights to the World Series in 1939. And as I remember, it cost them $100,000, and for that they got to broadcast the Yankees, I think, versus the Reds in 1939. And think of the number of impressions they made on minds in 1939 for $100,000, and they were getting into the minds of young guys like myself. I was 8 or 9, and millions of people, and they did it in those dollars then. And of course, if you were going to go out and try and have a similar impressions on millions of minds now, it costs a fortune, and part of that's due to inflation, part of it's due to other things. But it was a great investment which could be made in 1939 that paid off in terms of selling razors and blades in 1960 and 1970 and 1980 So that's the kind of business you want to own. Charlie?
Well, yeah, but if the inflation ever goes completely out of control, you have no idea how it's going to end up. If it weren't for the Weimar inflation, we might never have had Adolf Hitler. It was the twosome of the great German inflation followed by the Great Depression that brought us Hitler. And think of the price that the world paid for that one. We don't want inflation because it's good for See's candy.
No, I didn't quite realize I was proposing that.
I wasn't criticizing it.
What's good for See's candy is good for the United States.
Mr. Buffett, in the foreword to the 6th edition of Benjamin Graham's Security Analysis, you identified 4 books that you particularly cherish. 3 of these books were authored by Graham himself, and their influence on you is well known. The contributions of the 4th book to your thinking, however, that book was Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776. What that book meant to you is seldom discussed. So my question is, what did you learn from The Wealth of Nations, and how did it shape your investment and business philosophy?
Well, it doesn't shape my investment philosophy, but I certainly learned economics from it. And my friend Bill Gates gave me an original copy of it. So I was able to study it as Adam Smith wrote it in 1776. There's just, if you read Adam Smith, and if you read Keynes, Ricardo, and if you also read that little book we've got out there called "Where Are the Customers' Yachts," you will have a lot of wisdom. I forgot to mention, I was supposed to mention too, that we didn't want to put it on sale earlier because it would have given away the movie, but we do have Berkshire Bomber underwear out there, or sweatshirts, or whatever it may be. So Fruit of the Loom has those, and we have Fred Schwetz's "Where Are the Customers' Yachts" book, which contains an incredible amount of wisdom in very few pages and very entertaining. But if you want to not only get a lot more wisdom but appear more erudite, you should read The Wealth of Nations also. Charlie?
Well, yeah, guys is really worn well. I mean, he is rightly recognized as one of the wisest people that ever came along. And of course, the lessons that he taught way back then were taught again when communism failed so terribly, and people like Singapore and Taiwan and China and so forth came up so fast. The productive power of the capitalist system is simply unbelievable. And he understood that fully and early, and he's done a lot of good.
I took an idea of his on the specialization of labor, and he talked about people making pins or something, but I applied that actually to philanthropy. The idea that you let other people do what they're best at and stick with what you're best at, I've carried from mowing my lawn to philanthropy, and it's a wonderful thing to just shove off everything and saying somebody else is better than that, and than I am at that, and then work in the field that's most productive for you.
You didn't do your own bowel surgery either.
No. I'm not sure I have any reply to that.
What I absolutely love about Warren Buffett's content is that he gives a take that was relevant 100 years ago, it's relevant right now, and it's going to be relevant 100 years from now as well. And that is exactly why you should subscribe to this channel, is because we provide so much amazing content just like this, talking about the stock market, finance, and all of that, and we try to make every single video that will be relevant 100 years from now as it is relevant right now today. Thanks so much once again for checking out this video of income views. Remember to subscribe. If you can't subscribe, I cannot continue making videos just like this one for you. Also remember to click the like button and also comment as to what you think of this video and what else you would like to see in terms of personal finance, Warren Buffett content, and so much more, because we cover it all on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next video.